Alright, the first thing to do is to repair the drawer. This is going to be a real simple repair here. It's split and then someone tried to put nails in here. I'm just going to get these nails out real quick. And it looks like a nice clean split, so should be able to glue it right back together. Yep. And just putting an extra clamp here just to get it lined up. Now let's take a look at these posts. It was repaired with some screws. I've got to get these screws out first, and then address the splits here. It's a split in the front here and here. This is probably the worst one. I'm going to use the impact driver to back these out. Come right out. Yep. There. Okay, now we can fit that piece back in. But there's a little piece missing in here. So I'm going to have to put a small block right in here to fill in this. Alright, now we got a crack on the side here, on the inside edge, and in the face here. And there's a little piece of veneer that's just starting to break loose here. So I'm going to try to use the brush and get some glue down in this crack. And down into the crack in the face here. Now on the opposite side here, the crack was down the length of the post here. I'm going to try to rub some glue into that crack. Also on the face, I'm going to rub some glue into the crack. Finish filling this up at the top here. No. Okay, we'll clean up the glue. Now on the opposite back corner, there was a screw and a nail. Now I want to repair the missing area. So I'm going to take the saw and make some plunge cuts and square up the missing sections. And then fill the area in with some new pine. Now on the one back post, there's some fine cracks. I'm going to take the saw and make some wedge-shaped cuts, and then fill them in with little wedges. Now we have these tenons that were cut off in the legs. I want to drill those out. I'm going to use a 5/16 brad point bit, and then go to the bench and chisel out the remainder. Now I'm going to trim off the excess wood. and clean up the bottom of the posts. There's some old glue. Use the chisel and then a file to square up the bottom. Now I'm taking a carving gouge and just rounding out the hole. And later on, I'll patch to those screw holes. Alright, let me show you where I'm at here. I've got the legs dry fit in. I cleaned off the tenons. And they all fit pretty good. But what I'm doing right now is making sure they're straight. And what I'm doing is clamping straight edges from the post all the way down the leg, and then clamping the leg to that straight edge to make sure it aligns with the front. This face here should align with this face right here. And I also have to make sure they're straight in this direction too. It's going to be a little bit of a change. I was originally thinking a stretcher across the middle. But I was looking at pictures of servers, and I found a couple pictures very similar to this one. And to be correct, should actually have a shelf across the bottom. It's going to be maybe 3/8 to a 1/2 inch thick, and have a little bit of a shape on the front. Let's take a look at those pictures, and I'll show you what I'm talking about. Right here I've got my mahogany board. Just happen to have one that matches the top really well. And I'm going to cut 2 pieces for the shelf, and then I'll have a strip for the rails. Alright, now that I have the legs braced nice and straight, I'm going to measure for the rails. And it looks like about 15 1/16. And I come up with about the same dimension on both ends. Okay, here's our 2 rails. Remember, it was 15 1/16, plus I added 1.5 inches. So it came to 16 9/16. Now what we have to do is mark out the tenons. And I'm going to set marking gauge to 3/4. And I'm going to mark line 3/4 of an inch in on the ends. Okay, the tenons are 5/16 wide, and they're 5/16 in from the edge. Get the mortising gauge set up, and set up about 5/16 in, and I made a little adjustment there. And then 5/16 between the 2 points. And that looks good. And I went ahead and did a little test piece. And fits right in there. Rails. Get that marked out, and I'm going to go to the bandsaw and cut those tenons out. Everything ready. Now I'm ready to glue everything up. For these joints, I'm going to use traditional hide glue, which is mixed with water and then heated up. Alright, here I'm doing the glue up for the shelf. I planed the boards to 1/2 inch. Alright, now I've got the clamps off. The legs are back on. Stretchers are in place. Now the next thing is to make the shelf. And what I'm going to do first is make a template out of some 1/4 inch plywood. Alright, I'm going to take the piece of plywood and line it up at the corners and mark the posts. And then do the same thing on the ends. Now I'm going to square up the corners. And went to the bandsaw and cut out those corners. And had to do a little refinement. Now I want to mark out the shape on the front. And I decided to come in about 2 inches. And make a straight line across the front. Now I'm going to start drawing the shape. Just do that by eye. And decided I didn't like the way that looked. So I had to come in a little farther. I like that better. Now I drew the same shape on the opposite end. Now I'm going to step back and take a look at it. And it looks good. Let's go to the bandsaw and cut that out. Now I'm going to lay it on the mahogany and trace it out. And now back to the bandsaw. I transferred those marks to the bottom of the shelf so I can flip the panel over and cut all 4 corners. And also adjust the fence as needed. Now I'm going to check the fit. Clean up those cuts. Now what I'm going to do is put a bull nose on the front. And the quickest way to do that is just file it. Start with a rasp, and then a bastard file, and then a fine file. And finally, clean it up with some sandpaper.